Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome to today's video. We're going to be working on that 300ZX back there, but more accurately, we're going to be working on the engine and the turbos for that. And right over here in front of me, let me flip the camera around and I'll show you the engine and what we're going to be doing in today's video. So what we're doing here is we're going to replace the turbochargers with factory new center sections. The turbos have been leaking a ton, and I mean a ton of oil, and you can see that caked all around the compressor housing there. You can see all that, 30 years or whatever of oil that has been leaking down. And so what we're going to be doing now is replacing both turbos with these new ones I got right here. So these I ordered from overseas. A company in England sells these. And I've used them on another car. In fact, we used them on Jonathan's WRX out there. We bought a center section for his car when we were doing the same thing on his car, engine reseal and clean up and stuff. So it worked out really good, and so I contacted them, and they provided me with two brand new center sections here for a good price. So what we're going to do is take this nasty looking turbocharger assembly right here off, and we've got to clean it so we can work on it, and then completely disassemble it all the way down to the center sections, and then put the new section in, put it all back together, and put it on the engine. So that's actually going to be a pretty big job for me anyway. Because these bolts are old and a lot of them are kind of want to break and they're rusty. So this is a look at the other side. It's also caked up in oil like crazy, as you can see there. So the other problem that actually kicked off this entire project of me working on this car at all was these two studs in the turbine housing broke. You can see both of those right there. They literally just snapped off, and I could not remove them in the car to replace them because it was too tight in the car to do anything. I actually tried to weld a nut on this one. That's why it's all white, because of the heat. But I tried to weld a nut on this one and it just snapped off. And there was so little room to work up in there that I just gave up and said, you know what? This engine's got to come out. And so here we are. Engine's out, and we're going to be doing all this in one big, kind of a big project here. But in today's video, we're tackling the turbochargers. So let's get busy on that. Okay guys, so through this section here, it's not a lot going on to show on the camera, but it's just me working through taking off fasteners and hose clamps and getting the engine in position. And yep, not really a whole lot to show here. It's just the basics of taking off anything that your eye can see, that you can tell needs to come off. Just start from the outside and start taking off hose clamps and start taking off any fasteners that you can see. You're going to want to take off the air inlet hose that feeds air into the front of the turbo, and you're going to want to disconnect all your water lines, which are usually just worm gear clamps. And yeah, that's about it. Just take off whatever you can see until things start to loosen up and work their way through here, and that's about all there is to that. Okay, I hope you can see that. Yeah, you can definitely see that. Look at all that oil pulled up there in the compressor housing. Literally just a bunch of oil sitting there. So that's just been leaking out, and under air pressure it's been, I think, just basically squirting out oil vapor for years and years and just coating everything underneath there. So that's what we're trying to fix, really. Kind of good to have visual confirmation of that. So in this clip you can see me trying to take the oil feed line off the top of the turbo and quickly find out that you cannot get a wrench in there from the front, the back, or any direction that you might try. So that's the way it is taking these turbos off. You have to make some compromises and do things in a particular order, but here I'm going to show you how to get it done. So if you follow that line around, it goes around a loop right there, and then it comes across to this, basically a junction block, and then I should be able to take them apart right here, and then that whole line should come off, I hope, with the turbo, and then I can take them apart from the turbo side once the turbo's off. There we go. Got them broke free. Okay, so I got the oil line disconnected, so now I'm going to go ahead and take the wastegate actuator and bracket off just to make there be less stuff in the way here. I think it'll be smart to go ahead and just get him off of here for now. There we go. Okay, so my plan now is to take off this oil line right here. Is this an oil line or a coolant line? This is a coolant line. So I'm going to try to take off this coolant line. It's got this compressor outlet attached to it. So to get it off, you need a 19mm wrench, and come in here and grab on the bolt and thread it out. Hopefully it'll come out that easy. There we go. Got them out of there. Okay guys, so now comes what might be the hard part. We got to take off that nut, that nut, that nut, and those all have pretty good access, but then we've got one back here that we've got to get to. And he looks like you have access, but you can't actually put a socket and an extension on him because the center section is actually in the way. So we can't just put a socket on him like we would like to, unfortunately. I don't know what we're going to get into there. Maybe just wrenches will do the job, but these suckers have had a long life of tremendous heat. So let's hope they come off without too much struggle. Let's see what we can do. Okay, so I'm going to start by trying with this kind of a dogleg looking wrench thing here. I love these, by the way. We'll see if we can get it to break over. Oh wow, that sucker came loose. That thing was almost loose. Oh my gosh. That's incredible. I can't believe how loose that was. I put zero effort into that and it just came loose. I don't even understand how that's possible. That's worrisome. But if you notice, they've got these locking tabs. This little tab right here that's bent over. There's one right here. So I don't know if you can see that, but there's a tab right here that's bent over and one right here that's bent over. And I already knocked that one out. So that tab will keep it from coming loose. It's a safety. But still, the nut was not, it just wasn't tight at all. That thing had like 2 pounds of torque on it. I don't understand that. I hope they all come off that easy. But it worries me. Why would they be that loose? I am happy they're coming off. Or it's coming off nice and easy though. There we go. 1 down. 3 to go. Alright, let's see if this one's loose or tight. Oh my gosh, so loose. That thing was barely tight. I do not understand this. Okay guys, I don't know how much you missed because the camera turned off, but all these have been really loose and easy to get off. So everything's coming off beautifully, and this is the last one. And then the turbo is going to be off of here, I believe. Alright, there we go guys. A little bitty tiny turbocharger. She's off of there. This thing doesn't even weigh anything. Amazing. Okay guys, so we got the turbo out, and I got the rest of the lines off of it. This was that last oil line that screwed in through the top. It just came right out. No problem there. And now it is time to start working on taking out the bolts to disconnect the turbine housing. So the 13mm bolts, and I've got it clamped down to the table a little bit here. So we're going to see if we can get these out of here without too much trouble, or if they're going to be a lot of trouble. Okay, that guy's on there pretty daggum tight. May have to use some heat. Get it hot first, maybe. I got one started to come out, so that's good. Try a different wrench on that. Problem is I need the length of this wrench, but I don't need the offset now. And I don't have a 13 that really does that. He's one to strip. I gotta be really careful not to strip these guys off. That felt pretty good. Felt like it was actually turning. Yep, good. I don't like that. That guy's getting tighter the looser I go. That is a really bad sign. So he might break. We'll just have to see what happens. Okay guys, so I got that guy to break loose, and the way I did it is I took this old 13mm that I had shortened, and I put him on there, and I hit it with a hammer, and it broke loose. That's after I put the heat on it, so that seems to have worked to get it to break loose at least. Okay guys, so I've decided to go ahead and start working on the compressor housing, getting it off, and hopefully that'll allow me to access some stuff better on the turbine housing. So there's a big old snap ring in here that you've got to squeeze and pry out, and then the compressor housing can come off. So I used some of this Freol, and I sprayed all in there, a whole bunch of it. And then I took a punch and a hammer, and I started tapping on the clamp inside there, and that just allowed some of the Freol to get under it, I think. And then I'm using a pair of needle nose pliers to grab in the clamp and just start squeezing and trying to let some of that penetrating fluid get underneath the clamp and start to do what it needs to do. So that's where I'm at. So I've got it squeezing and moving all the way to about right here. So I could probably attempt to pick this out and get one half of that clamp kind of sprung out of there. That might be what I try to do now. Okay guys, so it is the next morning, and as you can see, we were able to get the compressor housing off last night. That was a major undertaking. I didn't film most of it because it was so difficult to do, and it took two people, and there just wasn't really room to film and work at the same time. But the basic process is you've got to remove this snap ring out of the groove that's down inside here. And essentially what we did was we used these needle nose to compress the snap ring, and then we used a flathead to get under one end of it. And you can see we broke the flathead. This is a very, very hard thing to do. But we got it underneath one edge and just worked it all the way around and sprung it out. That allowed us to get the compressor cover right off. It just came right off after that. And then, so now I'm back on the turbine housing, and what I did was I sprayed a bunch of penetrating oil down inside the turbine wheel in the hopes that it would soak overnight and lubricate the joint between the center section and the turbine housing, which is right there. That's actually where these guys are supposed to come apart at. So that is a very, very, very tight seam right there, and this is always a hard part when you're taking a turbo apart, is separating these two halves. So I let it soak overnight, and it's the next morning, so it's time to get to work and see if I can essentially hammer. I've got to figure out a way to hold on to this and then hammer on this 180 degrees apart and then 180 the other way and get it to knock off. So what I should have done is left this on so I could hold on to that and then hammered on this and then went to that, I guess. That's what I found out by watching a few YouTube videos. But too late, I've already got that off, so we got to work with what we got here. So let's see what we can figure out. Alright, so I got the last bolt out, and the last little C-clip came out just like that. Actually came out really easy. And then now the center section is loose. Aha. And she is out of there, guys. There we go, success. Got that thing out of there. I'll be honest, I did not know if I was going to be able to do this job. I did not know if I was going to be able to get that out of there. So happy. Okay, so I just ran all the bolts down through a die to clean up the threads on them. They were in fairly bad shape, but they cleaned up really easily. And then now I'm running a tap down through all the holes. So something I would definitely say you absolutely want to do on any job like this is chase all your threads, because these threads undergo so much heat and warping and rust, and it's pretty much the most hellacious environment of your entire engine is right here. So I think the next step is to try to test fit the new turbo and basically just see if it's going to fit in here nice, or if I need to really clean this up a little bit with some sandpaper or something. So let's see how it looks. Oh, it fits in there really good. Yeah, that's super good. That's what you want. You want it to fit all the way down, and you want it to still be able to twist and spin real free. So that looks like a perfect fit. So I think the next step will be to put the C-clamps back on, get all the bolts started, and then clock the turbo exactly where we want it based on how we had the old one clocked. And I made marks on the old one. That's something really important I should have mentioned earlier, is you want to make a mark on the turbine housing, the center section, and the compressor housing so that you can align everything back up exactly the way it was. So you may notice I have a yellow paint pen mark right there. I have a yellow paint pen mark right here. And then I have a yellow paint pen mark on this guy somewhere, but he came off, so I actually scratched. It was yellow right here, but it came off, so before it came off, I scratched a shiny spot right there on the turbine housing. So you can just scratch a line through everything if you can. This stuff was really hard, so I used paint. So now I can line up this to this to this. It's really important you want to do that before you do any of this stuff. I should have said that earlier. If you don't do that, none of your oil lines and stuff are going to line up anymore, and you're going to really hate it. So yeah, let's put all this together. Okay, so I got those bolts tight, turbo spins freely and looks good, and I have got the compressor housing cleaned up of most of its grease anyway. And so now it's time to fit the compressor housing and clock it and put the snap ring back in. It still needs to be cleaned up a little bit. So let's see how she fits. Okay, it fits good, spins good, and turbo still spins freely. So everything looks good so far. I think now, actually what I should have done is I should have put the ring on first and then the housing. So let's do that. Okay, so eventually I realized that you should put the snap ring in the center section in the compressor housing first and then do the turbine last. We'll see what happens here. If I had the correct snap ring pliers, this would be so much easier, but I don't have any that are big enough. So I'm having to make do with needle nose, which is really not great. Okay, this is really tough. Alright guys, so fast forward a couple of weeks and I've been doing other things, and I'm just now getting back to the old VG30 here, so it's time to actually reassemble the turbos, put them all back on the engine, and finish up this job. So in the last clip I was still assembling housings onto the turbos. I did get all that done. I'm sorry I didn't get it all filmed. It was a very frustrating process and difficult, as you could probably tell by some of those clips. And eventually I got a little bit of help in the form of a second pair of hands to hold some stuff, and we got them together. Bottom line is, this is a very difficult job to swap out those center sections, but you can do it. I did it, you can do it. So it just takes some work and an extra pair of hands here and there. So now we have all new gaskets ordered up from Z1 for the job, and those just came in this week. So we can make sure everything seals up really good and that we don't have any leaks. So it's now time to reassemble the turbos onto the engine and put the wastegate actuators back on and all the hardware, and basically get all this wrapped up. Anyway, let's get this finished up and get this engine back in the car. Okay, so I assembled all the lines off camera. It's pretty basic on how to do that. I don't think we necessarily need to see that on film, but I will say it might be helpful for you and save a little time to label these when you take them off. Label them as to left or right and everything. It did take me a couple of minutes to look at it and figure out what went where. So that would save you some time. Also on the passenger side turbo, you want to connect the wastegate to the flapper door last. That'll be like the last thing you do, because this thing has to be flapped open in order for this piece here to clear this oil piece. Otherwise you can't install it. So after you get it bolted up, then connect your flapper door to your wastegate, and do not forget to do that or you won't have any boost at all. So I think at this point it's time to go ahead and bolt the turbo on, and yeah, let's get that done. So I went ahead and ordered up new turbo gaskets, and these are really nice T25 gaskets. In fact, these are the best I've ever seen in my life of any turbo I've ever worked on, and I've worked on a lot of turbos and a lot of cars. I've never seen a better turbo gasket than these. These things are incredibly thick and just really nice. These are OEM Nissan 40300Z, and they're not very expensive. I went ahead and got new ones because I don't want any leaks on this, because I can't service the turbo in the car. So it's best to do everything you can now and pray you never have to do it again. I've got to get this in there and then get the turbo in there and then get the hardware on there. So I'm using one hand to hold the flapper open here. It's really tight installing this turbo. I've already done kind of a dry run on this off camera to fit the oil lines, and it was tight. And now doing it with a gasket in there makes it even tighter. Okay, there we go. Usually after you get about 2 or 3 of these on, you realize you forgot something, you got to take everything back off again. So let's hope that doesn't happen. Okay, so you know how I said earlier, it's about now that I get 2 or 3 of these in and realize I forgot something and have to take everything apart. Well, that's exactly what happened. I've got everything installed, all the nuts and bolts torqued, all the lines done, and it came time to put on the turbo outlet right here, and I find out that I can't install it because these 2 bolts out here are perfectly fine, but there's one back here that you cannot put the nut in, the bolt in, because there is no clearance. There's no way to get it in because this turbo heat shield has the whole problem completely covered, and there's no clearance on top of it to install the bolt. The bolt's really long anyway, and so now I get the great pleasure of uninstalling the entire turbo so that I can put that on first and then put it all back together. Enjoy. Okay, so I took it all back apart and got that bolt in there correctly this time, or I got it in there first this time, and put it all back together. It really wasn't that bad. I think it only took like 15 minutes to get that dude off of there and put it back on. It was incredibly fast the second time. That's the way it goes, I guess. Once you know what you're doing, you can move a lot faster. So now it's time to come over here and do the what would be the driver's side here. Get it all done up with this turbo and all of its hardware. So I will film what I can, and I will make notes, and I will probably try to do the oil lines last this time and see if that works out better on this side. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so I went ahead and got all the lines bolted on, and it would appear that on the driver's side here you can go ahead and bolt on all the lines and the wastegate first and then install the whole turbo as a unit, at least I think. It looks like it's going to work out okay that way, so yeah, just bolt on all your lines just like they came off. Really no tricks or interesting or tricky parts to that. Just put them all back on there, torque them down, and use new gaskets and new crush washers on your coolant lines, and should be able to just put it back on. So we'll see. Okay guys, so I think I'm just going to cut it off right there. I was able to get the turbos installed and all the lines buttoned up, so I think that's a good kind of a natural spot to stop this particular video. So yep, turbos are on, everything looks good and is torqued down and ready to go. So I think this was a successful project. I will say my thoughts on this project after doing it. These are the first turbos, no, not first, these are second turbos I've ever rebuilt, first 300Z turbos I've ever done. So my thoughts on doing this, if you ever want to do this, you got bad turbos and you want to fix them up to OEM spec, obviously that's probably why you're watching this video maybe. You might be curious about what my opinion on it is. Well, honestly, it was way, way, way harder than I expected it to be. To get the old turbos apart was very, very difficult because of the age and the rust and the fasteners that wouldn't come out and so forth. So that was quite a battle. Honestly, I would say if you've never done that kind of work before, I don't want to tell you not to do it, because at some point in time you got to do a project like that. Otherwise you'll never have the experience of doing a project like that, and you'll never get to the point where you can do one of these projects if you don't just start. So this one's going to be a challenge for you if you have a Z and you want to get the turbos apart. But you may as well jump in and get your feet wet and get your hands dirty and dive in there and do it, because you're going to have to at some point. So if you're nervous or you don't have good facilities or time or something and you're like, I'm on the fence of should I do it or should I have some other solution in place, I would say have another solution in place. But if you go into a project like I'm going to do this and I don't know what I'm going to get into, but I'm willing to figure it out and I trust myself to figure it out. If that's your attitude, then absolutely go for it. So basically, I would say if you don't have time to work on it and spend a few days or a whole week doing this, I probably wouldn't do it because you're going to get stuck in a few spots and you're going to need to just put it all down and come back the next day. You're going to need to go to town and get, some torch to heat things up. There's going to be some issues, but if you're trying to get the thing together so you can get back to work in the next day or two at the end of the weekend, this is not a good project for something like that. This is a good project for if you've got plenty of time and you've got access to some good tools, drill press, drill bits, and heat and stuff. If you have that kind of stuff, I would say absolutely do it. But if you're pressed on time and facilities and patience and all that kind of stuff, probably better use of your time just to replace those turbos. Even though it'll cost more money, it'll take less time. So I guess that's my take on that. But anyway, I enjoyed doing this. It was a struggle, but it wasn't really that bad in the end. It was just some work. So it's done now, and the turbos look good. They're spinning free, no issues, so I think they're going to work out perfectly fine. But stay tuned to find out that, and click subscribe if you want to see the continuation of this project. And give me a thumbs up. Ask me questions down below. I know some of you are going to have questions on the turbos themselves, so ask me about that. And next up is to replace the rear main seal. And then I've got to order the front timing components to do the 120,000 mile timing belt replacement kit. So got to get all that in. So that's probably going to be the very next video. Anyway, thanks guys for watching. I appreciate you, and I will catch you guys on the next one.